The British comedian Vic Reeves is fond of saying 88.2% of statistics are made up on the spot, a figure he undoubtedly grabbed out of midair. But statistics aren't the only thing made up on the spot. The website Ask a Manager recently received a letter from a reader who had lied during a job interview. Responding to a technical question, the applicant should have said, "I don't know," but instead improvised an answer on the spot and tried to bluff through the discussion. Have you ever done that? Afterward, the person was anxious about the flub and wondered what to do. Well, Ask a Manager replied simply, "This is not good, but you probably already know that." The columnist went on to point out that few people object when we say, "I don't know, I'll find out and get back to you." But to be caught lying and trying to make up an answer reveals more than ignorance. It speaks to honesty, integrity, and judgment. "This is very, very bad," said Ask a Manager. "If you have a habit of making up answers when you don't know for sure, use this as an impetus to stop, right now, today. It doesn't take much of this to destroy your credibility." Sometimes as Christians, we think we have to know all the answers, so when confronted with a difficult question, we speculate, guess, bluff, bluster, make up some sentences, and put up a front. But few things are as annoying as blowhards who address topics on which they have little knowledge. There will be times when we'll be asked a question and we don't know the answer. What do? Well, we've seen in the previous article, we can say, "I don't know," but I'll find out. But suppose you cannot find a meaningful explanation or answer. You might say, "I don't know, but I'll find someone who does know." But suppose no one has a solution. What happens when you have questions or go through experiences needing answers, but none are forthcoming? Sometimes these are theological or theoretical questions. Exactly how did the universe come into being? Why is there evil in the world? Why do earthquakes strike? How long is eternity? Other times the questions are deeply personal. Why did this evil invade my life? Why did this earthquake strike my home? Why did I suffer this tragedy? The answers are not always available. Any of us who have survived a life-threatening disease or other significant trial in our lives understands that answers aren't always readily available. David Jeremiah says, "As I wrote in my book, When Your World Falls Apart, I was shell-shocked when my cancer diagnosis came 20 years ago and God didn't give me all the answers I wanted. To this day, I'm not fully sure why the Lord allowed cancer to invade my body. I've lived long enough now to have seen some of the benefits from the experience, both in my life and the lives of others. But I still don't know why the Lord allowed me to face this terrible disease, or even why He spared my life." God moves in mysterious ways, writes David Jeremiah. We don't always know why He plants His footsteps in the sea and rides upon the storm. I'm reminded of the old preacher who said, "God marks across some of our days. We'll explain later." Or as the poet put it, "Blind unbelief is sure to err and scan His work in vain. God is His own interpreter, and He will make it plain." But when? Perhaps not until eternity, and that's all right. Yes, we know God has promised to work all things together for our good, as it says in Romans 8:28. But for those who love Him, of course. But He has not promised to explain all the machinery behind that promise. Sometimes we have to surrender to the realization that we may never know all the answers, at least not on earth. We may never know why some people suffer, why some prayers are unanswered, why some problems remain unsolved, or why certain temptations assail us. There's something liberating about admitting we have no answers, and we can be all right with that. During some of our darkest days, David Jeremiah says, I wrote these words in my journal. I know you have a loving purpose in this. Keep us trusting you with each day and with each new twist in the uncharted road we're traveling. It's not always a twist in the road. Sometimes it's a bend in the river. In 1961, missionaries Jim and Doreen Tudo, who labored in the Thailand 30 years, were traveling with their children down a river toward Bangkok to attend a Christian conference. Just before midnight, the boat encountered a swift cross-current, gave a lurch, spun around, and capsized. Jim, Doreen, and all 3 children were thrown into the raging river in the darkness. The parents sank deeply into the water before resurfacing to grasp the side of the overturned vessel as it was carried rapidly downstream. When Doreen came to the surface, she managed to grasp the baby. The oldest son was also saved. But little Janet, nearly 3 years old, was missing. Rescuers plucked Doreen and the children from the wreckage, but Jim and the other men continued floating down the river, clinging to the side of the overturned boat. Some minutes later, a voice called out, "Here's the foreign child, dead." Jim tried frantically to resuscitate her, but it was too late. When he was finally reunited with his family, he was bearing Janet's little body in his arms. In an awful state of shock, the Toodles waited for morning. Their minds were filled with phrases beginning with "if only." But even in the darkness, the Lord was with them, providing strength and grace. Before morning came, Jim later wrote, 2 principles had begun to register in our minds. First, this thing has happened and cannot be altered. What matters essentially now is our attitude to it. And secondly, in the face of feelings otherwise The right thing to do will be to carry on in every way as normally as possible. Perhaps these sound rather cold, but we believe they represented God's guidance to us at that point. Being able to trust God and carry on was essential to the family's survival. The questions came, the tears flowed, and the sorrow threatened to wash them away like the treacherous river. But Jim and Doreen knew they had to carry on without answers, trusting the one who was their answer. Thankfully, in the Psalms, we see that David's baby, when it died, was definitely sent to heaven, and this is a comfort to all parents, that children and toddlers under the age of accountability are spared from the wrath to come because Jesus has paid the penalty for all mankind, and they had no available choice because they were such young little people. So the Lord saves them, as he indicates in his word. Now the Lord is sovereign, and his purpose gathered our little one to himself, paraphrased as they wrote in When the Roof Caves In. From the beginning, he gave her to us for those 2 delightful years and 8 months. And that evening we understood and could say gratefully, the Lord gave and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Once this fact was grasped, every detail fell into place, and a deep peace filled our hearts, they said. The painful if-onlys were finished, and there was no question of why, for we know that as for God, his way is perfect, and that he has the right to do with his, as he will with his own. All might not be fully understood, but he can certainly be fully trusted. We were called to walk by faith, they write. Why would we even expect to have all the answers anyway? God is infinite, his wisdom is unfathomable, his mind omniscient, his duration eternal, from everlasting to everlasting. If he were small enough to be understood, he wouldn't be large enough to be worshipped. Our minds are finite, our understanding limited, our earthly lives brief, and our resources meager. But Isaiah 40 says, have you not known, have you not heard? The everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, neither faints nor is weary. His understanding is unsearchable. Instead of asking if we can trust God with the unanswerable, turn that question around. Can God trust us with the unanswerable? Can he depend on us to trust him amid perplexity and impenetrable pain? We don't have to produce every answer to every question or the reason for every heartache. Our minds aren't always big enough to understand his unsearchable ways. Even wisest souls must sometimes confess, I don't know, and that's okay.